You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
Good afternoon. There's a story I keep thinking about when I picture him now. Somewhere just beyond what we can see, there's a warm kitchen. Nothing grand, just the kind that always smells like something good is about to happen. The light is soft, the table is worn in all the right places, and there's music playing. Not loudly, but enough to fill the space. And if you listen closely, it's Tchaikovsky. Sweeping, emotional, alive. At the counter stands a man we all recognize. He's got that familiar, gentle presence, the kind that made people feel at ease the moment they walked into the room. Maybe he's got a cup in one hand, maybe something a little stronger than coffee, Jameson perhaps. And on the table, there's a plate with chocolate donuts, because of course there is. Simple pleasures, but deeply enjoyed. That was his way. And then there she is, his beloved, the one he has missed in quiet moments and in loud ones, in the spaces between days and in the memories that never quite faded. She walks in as if no time has passed at all, and he looks up, and there's that look, the one that says everything that words cannot. No grand speeches, no need, just recognition, just love. And maybe as the music swells, one of them reaches out a hand, and in that kitchen, with Tchaikovsky playing and something sweet on the table, they begin to dance. Not perfectly, not for anyone else, but together, the way they were always meant to be. And if that image feels right to us, if it brings even the smallest bit of comfort, maybe it's because it carries something true. Because the man we remember today was at his core a man of kindness. Not the loud, showy kind, but the steady kind. The kind that shows up. The kind that listens. The kind that makes room for others. The kind that finds joy in music, in a shared drink, in something as simple as a donut, and makes those small moments feel full. And the kind of love he had, the kind that doesn't disappear even when someone is gone, that love doesn't end here. So today, as we remember him, we hold on to that image. A kitchen filled with music, a reunion long awaited, and a dance that never really ended, only paused. Proverbs 31 speaks of a woman of valor, and it's traditionally recited by husbands to their wives on Friday night after Shabbat has begun. But what of the husbands of valor? The men of valor? Allan Mandell was surely one of those. Being a rabbi is not always an easy job, but one of the great joys of this profession is that I get to know people like Allan and Judith. I don't know exactly when I came to know them, but it's been 20 years. Through simchas and burials of parents, illnesses and extended family connections, Allan has always felt a little bit like family to me. So when we sang the Shema together 2 days ago, surrounded by, well, everybody here practically in the front row, I was a little thrown when Allan began to tell me a story about a time when Rabbi Flip came to visit him after his hip surgery years ago. I thought I was Allan's favorite rabbi. And there I was, holding his hand, singing the words of our tradition together, and Allan is telling me about a time that Rabbi Flip came to visit. I tried to hide my deflation. And then he said, Rabbi Flip can't really sing at all. I really loved Allan. Allan was well loved by his kids, Lori, Abby, and Ari, and Stephanie, and Patrick, and Barry, and Anita, Seth, and Adina. By his grandkids, Davi, and Emmy, and Natalie, and Jessica, and Orly, and Anna, and Byron, and Sarah, and Elena. Elena? I knew that. Sometimes we are given the rare gift in life to know a love that is so deep and pure and rich. And for Allan, that was Judith. And when Judith died less than 2 years ago, it's not perhaps correct to say that a part of Allan also died, but rather that a part of Allan paused. There was a pause to Allan's joy, to his gratitude for life. He just missed her so much. I recalled at Judith's funeral a piece that she had once written. She wrote, "No one knows what happens after death. Your guess, notion, image, construct is as good as mine. What I do know is the thought that my loved one is gone, becoming bones in a box in the earth, is unacceptable. In the current parlance, I would never be able to say of that thought, it is what it is. That image would give me no comfort whatsoever. I don't think I could get over that grief, that sense of loss, of unimaginable nothingness. So I thank God my religion gives me permission to create a belief about what happens after death that brings me comfort. No one has ever come back from the dead to contradict my belief. Well, Judith, we have sent you your Allan. He missed you so much. I can picture the love-filled looks on your faces being reunited together once again, and this knowledge, this vision of you both dancing together as one, will keep us from sadness, from shedding unnecessary tears, for you have each other. And Allan, you have taught us what it means to be a friend, to be a father, and to be a mensch. And I will honor your memory by doing my best to be even just a little bit like you.
Times of mourning, we're often comforted by the words of Psalms. This is Psalm 23. Adonai roi lo echsar binot deshe yarbitzeini al me menuchot ינעלני נפשי ישובב ינחני במעגלי צדק ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו גם כי הילך בגיא צל מוות לא יירא רע כי אתה עמדי שבטך ומשענתך המה ינח חמוני, תערוך לפניי, שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני, כל ימי חיי, כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, אדוני רואי לא אחסר.
O God, you are my shepherd. I should not desire much more. I have my share of comforts, and knowing you are there offers peace. You calm my inner being and soul. I recognize your voice, God, encouraging me to do always the right thing. Even though life is surrounded by death, sickness, solitude, and unsafety, I am not afraid, for I trust that I am not alone. You are always prepared and keeping watch, and knowing this brings comfort even on the darkest of days. Even when it seems that others do not think of me or wish me well, you are there providing and caring for me. When I feel down, you remind me of your love. If I just look, I'd see my life has such goodness and blessing. May I always be able to identify kindness and goodness in life and forever be in the presence of you. We're going to hear from a few members of Allan's family, beginning with his kids Barry and Lori. Okay, beginning with Lori.
Thank you. Allan Mandell was born on May 26, 1938, near the end of the Great Depression. I can. I'm going to start over. Closer?
I'll just move a bit closer for you so you don't have to worry about it. You can back up. There you go.
It's my first time. Allan Mandell was born on May 26, 1938, near the end of the Great Depression. He was delivered by his uncle Al, Dr. Al Mizok, his father's brother-in-law. Allan, his parents Elmer and Evelyn, and his mother's mother, Bubby, lived in an apartment on the west side of Chicago. Because of his grandmother, he described his early childhood as having two mothers, and I believe he was a better man for it. That didn't mean he wasn't mischievous. By all reports, he was. As time went by, Allan became familiar with the iceman who delivered ice to the house, the janitor for the building who fixed everything, and of course the milkmen who trudged up 3 flights of stairs to deliver milk and eggs. He learned a lot from them. We just aren't sure what. School began, and Allan discovered new ways of getting into trouble. Some included his sister Shelley. So his mother became president of the PTA, and he was then persuaded to be a little bit less of a troublemaker. By high school, he was a good student and athlete, lettering in football and track. His college and fraternity life at AE Pi were a wonderful time for him. In recent years, the men of his youth met weekly via Zoom to discuss their aches and pains, remember the old days, and joke about how they all look good for their ages. His education at top-ranked University of Illinois College of Pharmacy proved to be perfect for Dad, as he won the Goldenrod Scholarship and a free ticket to his pharmacy education. He worked 3 jobs during his senior year. By then, he was married to our mother with a child on the way, our sister Stephanie. His first real job was manufacturing radioisotopes for Volk Radiochemical Company, later becoming a salesman and then a sales manager. Volk was sold, and Allan became a retail pharmacist. He then went to work for the Blue Shield Company and was asked to join Blue Cross to create a national drug prescription program, one of the first. He worked there for 10 years and had many accomplishments, which led him to be appointed by 2 presidents to a government program, Presidential Interchange in Washington, D.C. His position was assistant to the commissioner of the FDA. His project was package inserts. We're all very sorry that he was good at his job. His work in Washington was visible and important, but it was far away from his 3 children. By then, we had relocated to San Diego with our mother. So he left his job and he moved to San Diego to live near us, and he got a job with San Diego County Pharmacy. He became chief pharmacist, retiring there after 20 years. Soon after coming to San Diego, he met and married Judith, his great love. He became stepfather to Abby and Seth and began the long process of joining our 2 families. In retirement, he and Judith moved here to Nashville, spending time with Abby and Ari and their growing family here. Dad loved each of his grandkids, getting a kick out of their activities in Nashville and taking pride in their many, many, many accomplishments. Dad enjoyed the rest of his life here and spent the last moments of his life doing what he loved, laughing and making others laugh. He was himself to the very end, charming the nurses and doctors who cared for him and making sure that we were all going to be okay. And we will be, just not today. My dad is gone, and that's not okay. But that being said, we had a special relationship, and I say that knowing that everyone who knew him likely feels the same way. He made me feel seen and so loved, telling me often and showing me in his actions. As the youngest of the 3 of us kids, our life together in Chicago is a bit hazy, but growing up in San Diego, the picture becomes clearer. He left his big job in Washington, D.C. because we needed him. And at a time where this was unusual for fathers, he found an apartment that was a short walk from my mom's house, and he was present. For me in particular, he became my primary parent when I lived with him from the ages to 9 to 13. And those were not easy years for him, I am sure, since I was a messy handful. He was the one dropping me off at school every day when I sprained my ankle, and taking me to birthday parties I was invited to, and consoling me when I wasn't invited. And he was the one whose closet I was raiding for button-down shirts and bomber jackets. He tried and failed many times to get me to clean my room. That time stands out for me when I think of him and it's bookended by these last 5 years. When I moved to Nashville from the Pacific Northwest to be here with him and all of you. And Judith, his love. Hopefully, I was able to give back to him what he gave to me. My dad always had a good story to tell. When I was a little girl, it was the Jaguar that zipped up the hill and zipped down the hill. And when I was older, it was the time he walked in on Henry Kissinger with his pants down. Both made me laugh more than a little bit. He always had a roll of quarters from his Pac-Man. He always knew what kind of tires I needed for my car. He always had a Coke in the fridge. He always had a kiss for my forehead. And he always said, "I love you." And that's it. He just was the best. And we're going to have to figure out how to go on without him. And so now I bring you my brother Barry to tell his version of events.
Hi. My father was a kind and thoughtful man who loved his family deeply. He was also a man of deep character and commitment. He valued the relationships in his life, his family, his friends, his temple, and his community. He showed up for people. He cared deeply, and he made sure others knew that they mattered. He loved to laugh, gave the most amazing bear hugs, and truly loved his life. Those simple, joyful parts of who he was are some of the things I will miss the most. That love guided so many of his choices. After my parents divorced, he made the decision to move closer to my sisters and I in San Diego, so he could remain a constant presence in our lives. Later, when he married Judith, he opened his heart even wider, embracing not just his own children, but bringing together my sisters, stepsister, and stepbrother as one family. He truly did his best to unite us with love, patience, and care. I'm so grateful for the many things he gave so freely, his hugs, his warm smile, his sense of humor, and the genuine emotion he shared with everyone around him. He had a way of making people feel seen, heard, and loved. One of the things I will always cherish is his passion for cars, especially Jaguars. There's a lot of Jaguars with my dad. Some of my favorite memories are tied to that passion, like driving alongside the Pacific Ocean with the windows down and the radio playing, sitting beside him in his 1969 Jaguar XKE. It was purple, and it was a great car. I also treasure the time we spent together when I was a young boy in the garage working on that same car. Those weren't just moments about cars, they were moments of connection, of learning, and of being together. Learning to drive with him was another gift. From somehow parallel parking perfectly on the very first day of my learner's permit, something I never did again, to traveling to San Francisco with my dad for a 3-day driving course at the Bob Bondurant driving school, where we learned defensive driving, practiced 180s and 360s in cars, and even drove on a real racetrack. He made learning exciting, meaningful, and fun. He was always willing to share what he knew, to teach, and just as importantly, to listen. I miss him deeply already, and I know I will carry his love and the memories we share for the rest of my life. Though he is no longer with us, his love, his lessons, and the way he brought people together will always inspire me. And my sister Stephanie is in the Netherlands and can't be here today, but she sends what I'm going to read next. She said, "I think the best times I had with my dad were driving around in a car again. He had a Jaguar, and we used to take it on the weekend up and down Sheridan in Chicago for an hour, either in Chicago or up to Wisconsin, usually with nothing at the other end besides turning around and going back. I don't particularly remember what we'd talk about on those trips when I was small, but the car was converted from right-hand drive, which made it easier for the passenger to shift because of the angle, so I learned how and when to change gears. Once we were driving up the California coast through Big Sur, probably in the brown Camaro. I have no idea why anymore. The road is very twisty with a lot of blind curves. There were a lot of motorcycles on the road, and they were passing everything, really going too fast for the road. We were terrified we would come around one of those curves and see one that had passed us and then been hit. So they became the kamikaze motorcycles as they came up from behind to pass us. That phrase still sticks with me. Driving back from college, he met me in Colorado. He flew one way just to drive the rest of the way back to San Diego with me. We went whitewater rafting because it was there. My air conditioner was broken, so we had spray bottles of water and sprayed each other and drove with the windows down to catch the wind. The last time I visited, we took a ride just to have lunch and poke around in Franklin. Nothing special, just to get us out of the house. And then she said, "Love you, Dad." So that's that. Thanks for being here, and Abby, I think you're up.
Again, also, I'll just echo Barry's thanks for being here. I know that we did a really tight turnaround because of our out-of-town family, so thank you for coming on short notice. And I know how many people are on Zoom, and thank you for being with us, too. I met Allan when I was 16, and I was a terrible 16-year-old. I was a terrible 15 and 14-year-old, too. And I had no business being, the kid that I was, especially when he met my mom and got married. And he and my mom were so optimistic about how our families would get along. And I remember my mom saying, "He has a daughter just your age. You're going to be fast friends." And Lori and I said, "We'll see about that." And I remember that they took us all to a Chinese restaurant in La Jolla for the big meeting, and we all just sat with our arms folded in front of us, and grudgingly ate some sort of Chinese food. When they got married, we were all in the rabbi's study at Temple Beth Israel in San Diego, and Allan and my mom were just, arms wrapped around each other in bliss, and Lori, Barry, Stephanie, Seth, and I were all either crying, staring stonily in front of us, or throwing up, really. So that was fun. And I just remember my mom telling me when I was 16, "Well, you don't have to like him, but you do have to treat him with courtesy. Someday you might, grow to like him." And I said, "I'll see about that." And I remember, again, not a nice 16-year-old, and I remember her telling me, "He's going to park in the garage now. You're going to have to park on the street." And I was like, "What?" And I just remember just being so, offended by this. And then I fell in love with him, because you can't not, I didn't want to, but I did. And he started to teach me about cars. I didn't grow up knowing about cars. And he was so upset at how low my gas would get. And he would say in his Chicago accent, Abby, no." And then I misunderstood him, and I thought that you're supposed to change your oil every 300 miles instead of every 3,000 miles. So I was consistently changing my oil until I told him, and he was like, "Oh, what? No." So I had to catch up a lot with my car knowledge to the rest of the Mandell family. He was such a great stepdad. He was such a great dad. Something Barry said, I didn't even remember this. He he drove with me from San Francisco to Texas when I moved for grad school on my way to meeting Ari. And he said, of course I'll go with you. And I had a ficus that my mom had given me for my first job that I had taken from place to place. So he, every night, took this giant ficus up the hotel steps wherever we went, because I didn't want the ficus to die in the car, because it was 120 degrees. And he was like, all right, here we go. And then in the morning, he would take the ficus down, and then he would place it in the back seat, and it was a whole thing. I'm glad that he was married before, prior to meeting my mom, because if he hadn't been, then we wouldn't have Barry and Lori and Stephanie. Glad my mom was married prior to, because here I am and here my brother is. But I think it took them a little while to get it right, and they got it right the second time, because I can't remember. I just can't imagine them being with anyone else. They were exactly what the other needed. They filled in the gaps. They fit each other's puzzle pieces perfectly. And they had such a warm and wonderful companionship until she died a year and a half ago. And they were married for almost 40 years. They loved to travel. They went to China and the Caribbean and Israel and Europe. And, for those of you who knew my mom, she was just kind of a whirlwind of activity and creative and all over the place. And he just was her anchor, forgive the cliche, but he was her rock, and he listened to her worries and her fears, her anxieties, and he just calmed her instantly. It was like magic. It was like a tonic. He thought she walked on water. He would happily take back 20 pairs of shoes at a time to DSW, and he would comb through Publix looking for exactly the right gluten-free product. And I always used to wonder if he was okay with that. And I used to ask Ari, does that annoy him to return so many things to so many stores? And after she died, it was when I realized how much joy it brought him. I guess kind of a purpose in some ways, I don't know. He told me that when she died, or since she died, he would walk around Publix and Costco, and people would ask why he was crying. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Her death definitely devastated him. He devastated us all, but it really, really, really shook him. And he wasn't the same since. A light went out. But having said that, whether it was with his cancer or with all of his health challenges the last couple of weeks, he was determined to fight as hard as he could for as long as he could. He loved her and he couldn't wait to see her, but that doesn't mean he was ready to go quite yet. He said he wanted to be able to see Davi and Emmy graduate and get married and have children of their own. This made total sense to me. He was such a good grandpa. He was there every day. He showed up. He was there for every birthday, for every Halloween, for every Thanksgiving, for every triumph, for every defeat, and for every round of mac and cheese that he made. He felt their joy as deeply as if it were his own, and he felt every sadness and challenge as deeply as if it were his own, and he loved them until the very end. He told me often how happy he was when he was voluntold by my mother that they were moving to Nashville when Davi was born. I say voluntold because she said he had a choice, but come on. He said it was the best non-decisions he ever made. I don't have a doubt in my mind that he and my mom are together now. I miss him so much, as will the rest of our family. But knowing they're together is not just comforting, it is freeing. he and I shared our grief a lot this last year and a half. And as Rabbi Laurie said, they loved to dance. He used to talk about this dance contest that they won on one cruise or the other. They were the last ones standing. And they loved to dance in that kitchen of theirs. They would just not necessarily need any music. They would just sway. And I think a lot of people in Harpeth Trace were confused when they walked by their window and saw. When he was almost at the end, I told him how happy I was that he was going to be with Mom. And he said he couldn't wait to take her for a spin. So, love you so much. May you both dance forever in love, without pain and in peace.
Yeah, we're going to do a song, then we'll have more of you. We're not cutting you off, don't worry. בידו הפקירוכי בעת אישן והעירה ואמרו פי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא יירא ואמרו פי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא יירא. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Hold me in your hand. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Safely in your hand. בידו הפקירוכי בעת אישן וירא ואמרו פי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא יירא ואמרו פי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא יירא. Have a few more thoughts and memories. Come on up.
By my count, I was the last grandchild to learn how to drive from my grandpa. And honestly, looking back, I still think he did not need to hold on to the handle that hard. And I also really think he didn't have it right because at the core of him, my grandfather was a little bit of a troublemaker. I remember as I got older and older and older. Oh my God, I'm 20 now. The story started to change a little bit. I remember as a little girl hearing a story of how when he was a little boy in school, how he would dip. There was a little girl who sat in front of him who had these long blonde pigtails, braids. And according to him, this was a time when there were still inkwells in the corner of the desks, and I'm sure you can all see where this is going. And then my nana got called to school, and then the next day it happened again. And funnily enough, this was not to be, my nana going to school was not to be a single solitary occasion. I heard many stories of her washing out his mouth with soap and water. Did that stop him from swearing at the teacher again? No, it did not. And then he got a little older, and I got a little older. I heard stories about how when he was in his AE Pi fraternity and at college, how he got in some big fat trouble because he drove a car through a football field. I never quite heard the end of that story, but perhaps someone in the Zoom fraternity brother audience happens to know. I heard so many stories. Even recently, when I started my organic chemistry class in college, he told me the story of how he blew up an entire organic chemistry laboratory when he was in pharmaceutical school. It still rings true. Apparently, he managed to get out of that with only a C in the class, so teach me your ways, Grandpa. I learned a lot of things from him, from my grandmother, too. I will never forget how he taught me how to treat other people. He never met another person he couldn't like. I met a lot of people I couldn't like. But he never met a person he couldn't convince me to say a nice thing about. I don't know how I will explain to anyone who hasn't had the privilege of meeting him the kind of man my grandfather was. I don't know how to distill his kindness into a few words or a page in a speech or whatever. It's hard to describe him if you couldn't have met him, and I'm glad everyone here has. Knowing him was a privilege. I told him, I've said before, and I'll say it again now, he was the best gift my grandmother ever picked out for me. And I'm so glad I've had the privilege of knowing him. I found that every day he woke up after my grandmother died was a gift. Every time I got to see him, talk to him on the phone, explain to him once again how to see the Far Side comics, I would text him on his very large cell phone. I'm still not really sure what the problem was, but I'm so glad he had so much time to laugh. I'm so glad he always found time to laugh, to make others laugh. I'm sure I could stand up here for the rest of the day and you could all tell me your stories of all the times he made you laugh and we wouldn't even be halfway through. I think that's what I'll always remember, how I'll always describe him. Laughing, usually at himself, laughing at his own jokes. I can't think of a way to talk about him without laughing, even as I'm crying. I'm so glad we've laughed so many times in these last few minutes because I think that's exactly what he would have wanted. So hopefully for all of us, myself included, when we go on and try to live our lives in a world that doesn't have him in it, we will remember him in the moments when we laugh at ourselves. And now for my dad.
Allan was such a wonderful human. While there are so many stories to tell about his long and eventful life, which we've heard many of those already, from his many years as a young troublemaker, one of my favorite Allan stories was that his sister's first word, no doubt due to being the word she heard most frequently in the house, was Allan. To his professional accomplishments, to his lifelong network of friends and loved ones, but I'm going to focus instead on the time since his beloved wife Judith died about 18 months ago. Before Judith died, Allan and I were close, and we enjoyed a rich companionship with much of the time we shared together being with, for, and about Judith and Abby or Davi and Emmy. Those were good and happy years, especially once Abby and I figured out that there were some favors we could ask Judith for, like, for example, if one of our daughters wanted a play date with her, and we scheduled it really far in advance. And there were some asks that were more Allan asks, like a last-minute errand or picking up a sick kid from school. Those were definitely Allan favors. Judith's passing changed so much in so many painful ways. My relationship with Allan became so much deeper, so much richer, so much more authentic. We went from talking about our shared family and what was happening with them to talking about ourselves. Granted, it happened in between YouTube videos and football games and TV shows, but it was real and raw and powerful. And, it's hard to be thankful for commercials today, but those commercials and those things were moments when we were talking. And it meant so much to me to have those moments. In so many ways, Allan spent the last 18 months waiting to start his next chapter. Not quite ready or not quite feeling the need to actually finish the part of the story that was about Judith's death and begin this next section of the book of his life. To be clear, that isn't to say his days weren't fun or fulfilling, though Judith's absence left a hole in his heart that simply couldn't be filled and left him not really interested in trying. His life was so very filled with warm friends and family near and far. Every day he had plans with someone to do something. Zoom calls with old friends and fraternity brothers and family, dinner plans, neighbors, the synagogue, and so much else. All of them meant so much to him. And during his sudden hospitalization, it was simply impossible to keep track with the overwhelming number of people that craved updates and joining us in our hope for his recovery. While Allan's grief may have been bottomless, in his last illness, he affirmed the depth of his desire to live. He instructed his doctors to do whatever they could to heal him, and they did try. He spoke of his grandchildren's graduations and weddings and other happy occasions and his wish to be part of those moments. And he fought as hard as he could to make that happen. Then, when it became clear it was not to be, Allan accepted that reality with a grace and a clarity that was extraordinary. Each time we got bad news, he would ask for some treat that might not have been on his diet. First, it was a Coke, then a hamburger, and a milkshake, and finally some whiskey. And these were not casual requests. These were very serious. And once he started to ask for something, he did not stop until he got it. He kicked some of us out of his room and said, "Don't come back till you bring me some Jamesons." And the doctor told us it was the first time she had written a doctor's order for whiskey. But they literally scanned the barcode on his bracelet and entered it on his chart, apparently. Allan's last day was a beautiful one. It was filled with cherished moments for him, with his friends and family. No matter how we tried, of course, we couldn't get to everyone. But he spent every moment of that day surrounded and embraced by the love of all of us here and beyond. When it was time, he calmly told the medical team he was ready. And surrounded by the love of his children, he left us to rejoin Judith. Allan's memory in his life will always be a blessing.
Thank you for all the words that you all shared with us. I'm very appreciative, Ari, that you shared so much about this week and Allan's last full day. I said to the family before we came in here, you've heard so much about how Allan lived and how we all should live, but very few, and Allan will always be one of them, has taught me how to die. It was one of the most beautiful and extraordinary things I've seen. So thank you for being here with us. In a moment, we're going to rise for El Male Rachamim, and then we'll go out back and perform the mitzvah of burying Allan. We'll invite everybody who would choose to participate in that burial. We'll say Kaddish out in the cemetery. At 5 o'clock, we'll gather at Allan's home for Shiva. Shiva is from 5 to 6:30, and we'll do the service at 6 for those who want to be there for the service. Please rise.
El male rachamim shochein b'mramim Hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanafei hashchina
עם קדושים וטהרים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים. את נשמת אברהם בן אלמר וחנה, שלח לעולמו. בעל הרחמים, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו. וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Avraham ben Elmer Rechana, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And together we say,
Amen.
Amen.